Hello, my name is Amanda. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about sacrifice as a spiritual student. We're going to talk about the ether body and the ether body parts and what happens when they start to wake up, how we wake them up. And we're going to talk about Christ and Christ's sacrifice and beyond dogma and fundamentalism, what was going on in the invisible realms, in the ether, when he was on the death and resurrection path. So sacrifice, to jump right in, is going to mean something different to different people, first of all. You know what your attachments are in this world. You know, a lot of us have an attachment to food, to the internet, to social media, to sex, to all these things. Things that aren't bad. Things that have been demonized, but that aren't bad things. Those things that we are attached to that generally bring us pleasure, that bring us comfort, that give us temporary relief from our challenging life, those things are often connected to our lower chakras, our lower nature. When we temporarily sacrifice, when we temporarily fast from those things, fast from food, take a period of time of celibacy, take a break from social media, or all kinds of other things that we're attached to. When we temporarily sacrifice those things, we take our focus and our energy away from our lower natures and our more animal, greedy, reachy, dopamine hit parts of ourselves. We temporarily take that focus and attention and we put it on higher realms, on higher things, our higher chakras. When we do this, especially on a regular basis, that energy and that focus that's on our crown chakra, our third eye, our etheric body, power and spiritual energy starts to flow through those parts of us that maybe doesn't get a lot of attention. We only have so many hours in a day. We only have so much energy. We're in limited human bodies. And so that energy and focus and time that we do have that is limited, it's going somewhere. So when we sacrifice these lower natures, and we're not repressing our desires. This is something that people say, oh, we don't want to repress our desires. And I completely agree with that. We shouldn't be repressing our desires. It's literally a switch from a focus from here to here. And at first it can be really hard. It can be really uncomfortable because the body, not the spirit, but the body has been in a routine and a pattern of relying on certain things to feel good. And that's just kind of where we are. There's no judgment on that or those things. But at a certain point, we might feel curious about how attached we actually are to certain things. And a temporary fast, a temporary sacrifice can give us so much self-information because we're here to know ourselves. And to know ourselves, it involves knowing what we're attached to. And some people find that, okay, I'm going to fast from this thing that I feel really attached to, and it's going to be really difficult maybe. And they go into that process and they're actually like, I'm actually not as attached to that thing as I thought I was. Actually, I feel amazing. Without that, I feel amazing. I'm feeling so much more clear. I have so much more energy and inspiration and ideas without focusing on that thing. And so when they come out of their temporary period of fasting or sacrifice, they're way less attached to that thing. They have no problem giving it up in the future. They're not afraid of doing that because they've had the direct experience of receiving and turning on like the higher centers of inspiration and creativity as a result of the sacrifice. And when we sacrifice and put our attention on higher ideals and serving and prayer and time in nature and take the focus to those things, we're attuning ourselves to the angels and the helping spirits. We all want visits from angels and dreams where we can be in touch with our helping spirits. We all crave those things because that's just part of who we are. But it's very hard to connect with those forces if all of our attention is on our lower nature, because that's not where they are. That's just not where they hang out. So it's not as though, I mean, most of us are not going to see an angel walk into the room or have a really vivid dream with our helping spirits. But what does start to happen with a regular practice of sacrifice is we start to experience the forces of those angels. We start to experience those forces as far as downloads of information that is helpful to us, that makes us feel more free and more knowledgeable and more loving. We might experience an easier time slipping into meditation. We might experience better dream recall. We might have creative ideas to write something or to draw something or to create a problem-solving solution for something. Those are the higher forces. So our angels are not, we like to personify angels, like an angel is a person that looks like this and it's this gender or whatever. But truly, an angel is an invisible force that we personify to try and understand and make sense of. But more important than what an angel looks like or what gender they are or what their name is, that's human, that's human stuff. What they represent and what they are gifting us and what they're inspiring us to do or create, that's really what we're connecting to. So if you don't know who your spirit guide is, or you don't know which this angel from that angel, that's okay. What really matters is about experiencing the forces and the gifts and the inspirations that they can bring. So sacrifice and periods of fasting from certain things brings us more into their world. It brings us more into their world because they just don't exist where it comes to attachments. That's not part of their reality. So sacrifice just lifts us up a little bit into more where they are. Sacrifice doesn't mean we stop consuming something or we stop indulging in something necessarily. It can be, I'm taking a dedicated period of time to be really vigilant and watch my small ego, because our small ego is known for blurting out things or spontaneously doing things that we later regret. We all know that. That's just part of being human, is to have a small ego. If we take a break from following that small ego around with its impulsivity, and we say, okay, I'm taking 3 days to just really dedicate myself to watching that thing and being silent, being generally silent and not allowing it to speak, not allowing spoken words to come from me unless they're really on point. These are other ways that we sacrifice. The small ego doesn't like that, and it's really hard because we're just in a pattern of being really spontaneous and impulsive. So sacrifice can be so many different things. We should be free to notice what it is that needs to be sacrificed in our own life. Sacrifice over the centuries, because it's something that the whole world has had some form of. You know, you hear about animal sacrifice, human sacrifice, all of these things that has been such a big part of humanity's history, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. It's still going on. And there are so many ways of describing why people do that, different angles of it. In this video, I want to just talk about the spiritual energy of sacrifice and the blood. And when we sacrifice ourselves, as far as these practices of giving things up, of serving when we'd rather be doing something else, we are taking spiritual energy, because we all have spiritual energy in our body. We're taking that spiritual energy and we're relocating it and we're reassigning it to something more glorious, more lighter, and that is more in line with the higher realms and the angels. So that spiritual energy that we all have, we are sacrificing ourselves. There are people who understand that there is spiritual energy in the body, great or small. Even in animals, there's life force energy. And so instead of sacrificing themselves, instead of doing any type of sacrificial practice or fasting themselves, they would prefer to use the spiritual energy of another being, human or animal, to exchange with the spiritual world to manifest something or to cause harm from a distance or something like that. So this is real. It's not just about people who are on a Christ path, a benevolent path, a self-gnosis path. There are people that use spiritual energy of sacrifice for nefarious reasons. That's the way it is. And so we need to understand that. We need to accept that that is a reality, and especially has been a reality in some of the more barbaric times of our Earth history. So basically, the spiritual student sacrifices themselves for important development and connection with higher forces. And the person who's not on their spiritual path can still use power of sacrifice, but they're using somebody else's body, an animal or another human, to get favors from the spirit world. Because there are also lower spirits in the spirit world that want that life force. There are people that do spiritual exchange using those kind of sacrifices to get favors, to manifest things from lower beings. You don't need to worry about that yourself, because it's very obvious that a person who's sacrificing themselves for the higher forces is in the hands of God and the angels. But just knowing that people do that, and they are aware of sacrificial energy, and that has always existed. And in many of our past lives, we have been also people who have done that, and and who have harmed other people, sacrificed other living beings to manifest things. So just knowing that this is part of humanity's evolution is really terrible, but it's very real. And then this kind of like leads into the topic of the etherization of the blood and blood sacrifice and what's going on spiritually. So if you've watched any of my videos, you know I love talking about the ether body and the invisible bodies. So of course we have our physical body, and then the next layer of our invisible body, our invisible self, is the ether body. And then we have the astral layer beyond that. In the ether body, we have connection to higher worlds and more subtle bodies, like our astral body, and then, the astral bodies of higher beings. When our ether body is really blocked from trauma, we have a harder time connecting. We have a harder time sensing spiritual energy, receiving downloads, making changes in our life. That's just the state that we're in, most of us as humans, is that our ether body is just full of energy blocks. For example, we have our physical ear, but then we have like I'll call it our ether ear, our etherized ear, invisibly. So our physical ear hears sound, but our ether ear receives maybe a clairaudient word right inside our head that's like, it sounds like someone spoke it, but it's inside. And if you've ever experienced that, then you're probably clairaudient. Excuse me. And your ether ear is probably unblocked, or it was at least quite unblocked when you received that word or that message internally. So our different body parts, all physical, we also have ether versions of all our body parts that do different things. And people who have been on a spiritual path for a long time and have done a lot of purification, a lot of their different faculties of their ether body are working. If you talk to someone who studied Chinese medicine, they can tell you about the different organs and the different parts of the body and what they uniquely can sense if they are purified. And so our etherized body is clearing as we follow this path. Sacrifice is a bit of a shortcut to clear away extra debris. It's not necessary, but it's an option. And it's an option that's tried and tested through the centuries, and it works. So in the body, we also have blood that has its own ether version. So we've got, the red substance with plasma and all the things that's circulating and oxygenating and doing all of its amazing physical magic. But there is a ether version of your blood that you can just imagine as like a translucent, kind of wispy white astral fluid, etheric fluid, I should say, that's moving around all the time. We all have this, but in most of us, it's not really activated. It's not really doing much. What is contained in this circulating ether blood is a lot of memory. It's a lot of memory from your own ancestors. There's a lot of memory from history of Earth in general. It's really connected to all the different parts of Earth and what's happened in different parts of Earth, which is kind of hard to understand, but just bear with me. There are also latent gifts, like little unwrapped presents, symbolically, that are floating around in your ether substance of your blood. When the time is right, when a lot of spiritual energy starts moving through your body, and this could be anything. It could be, an out-of-body experience. It could be after many, many hours of a certain meditation practice. It could be in a plant medicine ceremony. It could be through blunt trauma. Then we get like a huge rush of spiritual energy from these things that kind of blasts through our whole being, and very suddenly and out of the blue unwraps a bunch of those little gifts that were hidden and wrapped up and secret and we didn't have access to. And suddenly a handful of these presents are unwrapped in our ether blood, and we're now having all of these very strange experiences, out of body experience, connecting with helping spirits or angels, getting psychic downloads, seeing people shapeshift, having premonitions and knowing the future. In the East, we called these cities. So sometimes these things all get opened way too fast and all at once, and we can't make sense of them, and we can call that a spiritual emergency, and we need a lot of guidance. Other times, hopefully, they're opened slowly, and memory comes back to you from your past lives. Memory of Earth's parts of Earth's history. They can burn the libraries. They can try and destroy our history and tell us that, we were created by aliens, aliens from another planet. They can tell us all kinds of things. But as your etherized blood starts to wake up as a result of the spiritual energy that you are allowing to flow through your body, no one can lie about those things. Because once you've had a very real past life memory, once you've had a very real download or vision of historical events of the world, not only do you see it as a vision, but you remember it because there's a part of you that was there. There was a part of you that was there. And so nobody can lie to you anymore. You can see right through lies because you start to know the truth, because all the truth, they say everything's inside of you, but that's really vague and hard to understand. But the information is in your blood. And so with sacrifice, it is one way to etherize our blood. It's one way of sending spiritual energy into our body that kind of blasts open these closed, wrapped up presents, helps us remember more of who we are and our nature. And so we want to etherize the blood. We want to etherize the blood, and we want to clear the blocks out of our ether body. We want to build our light body, our resurrection body, our diamond body, whatever you want to call it. We're building that. And we do that by clearing the blocks from our ether body, etherizing our blood. And as our blood etherizes, it's going to help etherize our ear, etherize our eyes, because the blood's circulating around. And as we do that, and our ether body gets more clear, we get more connected to other layers of the invisible bodies that are way more clear and connected to the higher realms. We all have these bodies and we all have these capabilities. So back to Christ and sacrifice, the dogmatic church, tells their story. And I think that there are truths in the Bible. I don't deny that. But we're not getting the whole picture. There is a whole esoteric spiritual version that is not taught in your everyday church. It's not understood. And it's now going to become more common knowledge because more people are waking up and remembering and understanding what was going on, and they can see clairvoyantly how this all works. Jesus the Christ, who carried the Christ energy to a higher degree than any other human being, and the Christ energy meaning compassion, creation, evolution, sacrifice, ability to do miracles, ability to see. All of these things are the Christ force. He carried the Christ force to a higher degree than any other human being. And so when he was sacrificed, when he went through the ritual of sacrifice and his etherized blood, and I should say very, very etherized blood with everything quite wide open. When that ether substance entered Earth's field, hit the ground physically, but also it was broken open out of his physical body and kind of like permeating the field. Earth also has an etheric body. Earth is not only a physical, just like us. It's not just a physical place. It's got an ether layer. So imagine the ether of Christ's blood hitting the ether of the earth. It's kind of like, I mean, if you want to make a picture in your head, think of kind of like a mist meeting a mist. You know, so there's a connection being made of like a high spiritual force that this man carried to earth, allowing it to be present here for those spiritual students that were alive at that time and were born ever since. It's available for us to tap into. We don't realize that before Christ's sacrifice, his death and resurrection, the earth did not, people on earth, even if you were a spiritual student, it was very, very difficult to get access to the higher realms. You know, it was a very dark time on earth, like very, very deep into the Kali Yuga. And so even if you were someone who had a spiritual master, a guru, and you did spiritual practices and all these things, like it was very rare for somebody to really be able to access what we can access now. And so when Christ did that, he released this substance, this invisible substance, into the field of the earth, allowing people like you or me, if we want to just start a spiritual practice, to start to tap in. All kinds of knowledge and things that were kept from the people started to kind of come into this layer around us to the field. It wasn't forced on anyone. If you're someone who's just always in your lower nature, you're not even going to notice. You're not going to have access to it because you're not interested. But it's been made available for those of us who are. And so that's an example of like a massive sacrifice, someone going through a cruel death for really no reason other than to release this etheric substance that really nobody else could have, if they wanted to, gift to humanity. After he is gone and he's not living a physical life on earth, you know, people take the teachings and people try and use it for their own gain and kind of turn it upside down. And you know, he probably knew that would happen, and that's all part of it too. Stories being changed, information being withheld, but because he was a high initiate, he knew that it was all worth it, because people like you and me would have access to higher realms when they were ready. So it's really beautiful when we look at sacrifice from a higher perspective, and we know that it's really not about withholding something from ourselves and feeling really uncomfortable and repressing ourselves. It's about taking a temporary vacation from feeding our dopamine hits and activating our ether body little by little. And it's not something that happens overnight. I will say personally that I did my first water fast, 7 days water fast, a few years ago, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. At the time, I didn't notice anything happening. So I did another one. I did a 9-day juice fast a few months later. Nothing happened. I set some prayers and intentions in a journal at the time. I wanted some guidance onto, you know, like what I wanted to do next in life, and nothing came through. Anyway, fast forward to the next year, and I was going to do another fast. I thought, you know, like, other people have talked about how this works. It's worked for them. It's brought them so many benefits. I got to try this again. I looked back in my journal from last time, and I realized I'd had an intention of, you know, what to do next in my life. And since then, I had enrolled in a coaching course, and I really enjoyed the coaching course and was meeting some great like-minded new people. And I realized, okay, like sometimes the benefits, the intentions come later and we don't even notice. We're not even linking them to our prayers. So I went into this third fast. It was another 1-week fast. And nothing really happened during the week. But then 2 days after the fast was over, I got an email from my bank. I was living abroad and I'd been gone for a few years. And the previous year, I had requested funds from a savings account, a locked-in savings account, to be released to my checking account. And they said, no, you've got to be here in person. You've got to sign papers. You can't do that from abroad. So I just let it go. But I kept thinking a couple times over the last year, like, you know, if I had access to that money, I would do this and I could do that. And I wasn't attached to it, but I was like definitely imagining what I could do. Then 2 days after this 1 week fast, I got this random email from a bank manager in Canada asking me to e-sign a document that would release this money into my checking account. I hadn't contacted them in months. So that's just that one story. I could tell many of how periods of time in sacrifice and fasting, they might not bring you exactly what you think you need. Like we think we want to manifest like a husband or a new car. We might think we know exactly what it is that is best for us. But what fasting can do, it can open up things that are kind of ripe, things that we hoped for, that maybe we weren't mature enough to receive when we first asked for them. Or just other surprises from the universe that, you know, our soul had a desire for and we didn't even realize until we received them and thought, you know, I wouldn't have even known to ask for this opportunity. But here it is. It's better than anything that I'd prayed for or intended before. And maybe my neighbor wouldn't even like think that's so great. But for me personally, it's so fitted for me. I'm so grateful to receive this that I wasn't even looking for. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you know what your thing is, to go for it, to set up something and to not be discouraged if nothing happens right away, but know that like, you know, these things set off ripple effects in the field where in human time we might receive something later and you will only know when you look back. So yeah. Anyway, thanks everyone for being here. And thank you so much for your support of my channel, and journey well.